I have to go a little bit in the family. I was born 1939. My father came back from the war because, you know, all our fathers had to be in the war, only in 1948. They were, of course, we lost the war with Germans, and many of our soldiers remained prisoner of war, and father came back in 1947. So I was already 8 years old. I went to school, and my mother said when I was born, my father showed me as a baby, said, "This will be a gemstone dealer." That was my start. So I went to school. I went to the elementary school. Then I went to they call their secondary school, but I went to gymnasium. I made my old gymnasium. And then my father was of the opinion, if you want to sell stone and you want to discuss people, you have to know what you're doing. So you are learning still cutting stones. So I am a trained gemstone cutter with diploma, with everything. Then I was already 19 years old because when I was younger, I was in school. Beside my hobby was languages. I went to English and French we learned in school, and the other language I learned in the evening school. When other were on let's say on a big party, I went to the evening school and learned language because I found this very interesting. How the continuation is like this. I was 20 years old, and then my father died already. There was not very great help from Papa because he came from the war. These people coming from the war, they were not anymore so healthy. And so my father died early. I was only 20 years old. Then I was standing there with my mother, and at that time we had very few employees. And then he said, "Look, your business is rough stone, better you go to Brazil." So I went to Brazil, and I became 21 years already in Brazil. They put me and threw me in the water and say, "You swim to the shore. If you don't swim, you drown." My luck was, I found an old friend in Brazil, also Rio Grande do Sul, also German origin, who was a friend of my father. I went to the Soledade, where my relatives still lived, and from these ones from 1872. I have even pictures from the cemetery where the name is died in 1906 and so on. And then I started the agate business there, and first I bought from local dealers, the garimpeiros, and then my father, when he left Brazil in 1932, he gave to his best employee a present. He gave him a farm of 150 hectares. So that's yours. And he never forgot. He said, "You can stay here all the time." And that was in the middle of the agate production area. So I was first in the agate. There I started. Then in 1965, I said, "It's not a business for you." They sold the agates here, when you were lucky, for $10 a kilo. 1,000 kilos, $10,000. 1 kilo of tourmaline at that time already, $50,000, 1 kilo. And here, 1,000 kilo. So as I have learned already cutting stones, faceting, I went into the, let's say, other kind of stones. I went into aqua and tourmaline first. That was in the state of Minas Gerais, where I went as a young man. And I spoke already Portuguese because it was my hobby languages. And I met people who were producing. I was there already at the time of Corcunda. You remember the Corcunda, the famous discovery? I was sitting on the marketplace in Governador Valadares, and the garimpeiros came from the fields with donkeys on both sides, big bags of tourmalines. The rich ones, the big guys, because nobody respected me, young, 21 years, what is this? Nothing, you see. I was sitting in the little cafe, boutiquinho, say they, and was buying from the garimpeiros that what the other ones did not want to have. Bags are full. I sent them home. We had the sorters here, hammers here. We made beautiful stones out of it, rough, and I made my first big money with the stones from Corcunda. That was the first strike. I bought, let's say, for 1, I can tell this openly, and sold it for 10, because they were too arrogant, these traditional buyers, to buy from the garimpeiros this so-called unclean stones, which I saw, yes, unclean, but maybe 2/3, but 1/3 is still good. And we were hammering, and I started making my fortune with that. And after this, of course, I was curious of Africa, because in Namibia before, Neuschwaben was also discovered by the Germans, by Heinrich Albert Becker. I went to Namibia and started there to be partner in an amethyst mine. Then Madagascar was still a big deliverer of Germany before the Second World War. And when I came there was almost 2 dealers. And I found out that there was this aquamarine deposit. And I said, Madagascar, you only can succeed, if you like, mining. And still people were very friendly, very honest. I took a French, the right man at the right place. I took a French geologist, Monsieur Urtebis, and we started mining the aquamarines of Marizo, that was here. And at the same time, I heard, and the story will be too long time, I heard about this, not lost, abandoned deposit already in 1924 from this tourmaline. And I went there, I made a little expedition and saw the rest of the tourmaline and started that. You know how I discovered them? Very easy. That was like that. I was in Tananarive in 1965, and there was no hotel. Everything busy. And there was one gemstone dealer, a German, a French professor called Professor Dr. Leandra. And his wife was dealing with stone. And I had no hotel. I said, look, if you like, you can stay overnight here with us in the library. You sleep there. I couldn't sleep in the morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning. I went up and I went to the library. I could French. I took out the book of Mineralogie de Madagascar. That's a very famous book. And I could see a description of this mine from 1920, where the professor, who wrote this book, I just come to the name again, visited the mine of Leon Kraft. Okay. And this story, unfortunately, I have given to this lady, Goya. And I went to breakfast in the morning. Monsieur Leandra even spoke German, but I didn't need that. I said, Mr. Leandra, sorry, I couldn't sleep. I was at your library, took out some books I found in the Mineralogie de Madagascar. I have still the original books at home. I said, I read about this mine of Anzana-Bonoina. I speak it in Malagash, Anzana-Bonoina. Who was this Leon Kraft? Is there still anything left? Because it's so interesting. And you know, you can study what you want. You can be the wisest man what you want in the world, but you need luck. And you know what he said? Ask this lady here, his wife. I said, Madame, who was Leon Kraft? She says, my father. And she spoke, she was grown up in Madagascar, she was French, spoke the language. I said, Madame, how can I see that? He said, next time you come to Madagascar, I'll arrange we go to that place. Next time, a year later, I came to Madagascar, and she arranged a Land Rover, and I have still a picture, she arranged one of the last stone diggers, which her father had, Rassimon, which at that time already was an elderly man. He said he will bring us there. So we made a little expedition. We went half with the Land Rover, with the Jeep, and half walking, like carrying everything on the back. I have a picture. You will see pictures here. Carrying everything on the back for almost one day. Then we came in a valley, then we came to a hill, and it was already dark, and we had only tents with us. And a storm was coming up. Madagascar, they have bloody storms, you see. We went in the tent and it started raining like hell. We stayed all night in the tent. And now I tell you something, but I opened the tent, I went out, I looked down the hill. What did I see? It was full of turbulence. Full of turbulence. I said, Madame, what happens? She says, yes, Mr. Petsch, you know, because this is not the turbulent mine. This was a famous mine for the Madagascar morganite. This was the same mine. And he said that the turbulence were a side product. I never observed in 1924. Robert, in 1924 there was so much discoveries from Brazil, I didn't need. So you know what I did? I collected stones, put in a bag, and went back to Tananarive, and these were terminals, always the triangle. And I forgot the name at the moment, it's 84, you don't remember, but I have it at home. But the triangle was already described in this book, the Madagascar. And when I came home, I discovered by our friends that this was something very rare. Then I went back to Madagascar, and I founded a company, Jarmatco, German Madagascar company. And then the long, long story, I arranged, I'm a German, we arranged it 100%, machinery, everything, and I started exploding the mine, here, the village, everything, and we found large quantity of tourmaline, which all had this triangle. So that was the start. But the start was by luck like this. And the aquamarine, which I discovered in this picture, was only a year before, was after that. We were working on Maritzo with my geologist, and I said to Ertebis, it was beginning of 70, I said, Ertebis, I think I paid this, our family paid. We made money here, we invested all our money back in the business. We did not borrow money. And I said, Ertebis, I think we should stop this because this mine will not produce it. Mr. Petsch, give me still a little bit time. And shortly before the birth of Thomas, he gave me a cable, at that time cable, 71. Please come, we have discovered stones, we left it in the ground. And then I came there and they discovered one pocket, 28 stones, 3,000 kilos. Then they brought the stones to Tananarive. I sent the stones here. At that time was everything easy. And we hammered it, and we sold almost 10 years from that stones. Of course, other stones, but I kept them 10 years, always hammering, classifying. Not only that, there was not only the supply for us, but it was just one line for this one. And then he said, shall we continue? I said, look, this was a big sign from God. We stop. This luck to find so many stones in one place we never will have. So I gave up the mine. Other people started working, exploited, never found anything any more similar. For example, you asked me for highlights. This is one of the highlights of, for example, Madagascar. Or Mozambique, I was always going to the mine of Alto Legonia, which is, you may know, at that time it were the Portuguese. And then, I will tell you, from Alto Legonia, and then I bought stones there, but nobody wanted to go in the bush. I had the courage to go into the bush. Therefore, we became so big, you see. And then when I was at Alto Legonia, at that time, same thing, they were exploiting stones. The Alto Legonia was at that time a mine for mica. They put out big plates of, and the side product was tourmaline. And these tourmalines, they put into boxes, and they brought to, at that time, Lorenzo Marques, now it's Maputo, the capital, and sold it to gemstone dealers. But this was mostly a competitor of mine here. But when I was on the mine, I saw so many things which I think, well, it's nothing. So I said, I'll buy these all. So I bought in Alto Legonia the rejects. And when when Mozambique was already, they call it independent from, they were 500 years there, the Portuguese. When the African population became independent, I was at the mine, and there was still a Portuguese geologist, Santos Garcia, and he said, look, we have still so much tourmalines, rejects that we laying here. We are still a company, we are still legal, do you want to buy them? I said, well, Santos Garcia, finish now. He said, no, we still have the license. I said, how much you have? I don't write it first. 14,000 kilo, 14 tons, 14. I bought rejects classified by our African brothers who never saw a cutting wheel, 14 tons. I brought it here to Idar. I had here the yard, drums full of stones. So I did not throw them on the market, clever as we were. We hammered them, we classified them, and the good stones we all sold in Idar, all these people, like the big names, like Will Carlegon, sometimes they bought a drum from me, or his brother, Hans Werner, for example. And we sold the stones, the good stones here, and the other stones we sold to India. In India, the India story comes, and we sold to India. So these were one of the highlights, you see. Because I had the courage to go into the bush. I had the courage to, when I was going last into the bush, it's not for the report, what I saw there, and then the Renamo, they called the terrorists, came in, and I saw how they killed our people. Don't write this. No. You see, that was terrible. And I was the last one going in this area there. Nobody had courage anymore. Therefore, I came, and the 14 tons arrived here, you see. And then, for example, that was one of these highlights. Alto Legonia, Tourmaline, black, gray, brown, red. Or let's say, I still have black stones around. It's like this, you see, all together. And we hammer them, we classify them, and then we had tourmalines blocks 10, 20, 30 kilos. When we started breaking them, never I would do it anymore because it was a sin to break big stones like that, you see. But you are young, you don't think. And then inside we found clean stones and we sold here to the market price. And we gave credit. We were like a banker.